Hey guys, back to talk to you guys about another deck tech, this time for the Junkion format. For those who don't know what Junkion is, it's a format where you can only use common cards, whether that's characters, stratagems, or battle cards. And it kind of limits the card pool, but it means you get different options that you normally wouldn't consider when building decks. The reason I'm bringing you guys a Junkion deck tech is in a couple days. The ATP team is hosting a Junkion monthly, and I hope that we get some people out to play because it's one of my favorite formats. A lot of cool interactions you normally don't get to see. The deck, though, that I'm going to be talking about today is Astrotrain, who is a character who in the past would probably be mocked for being registered in a deck list because his stat line, like at least his HP, doesn't line up for his star cost, and he kind of seems like Magical Christmas Land when you only focus on the bot mode ability. So Astrotrain is a 12-star character with 14 health, which is really low for the stars, 5 attack, which is solid, 2 defense in Alt 1, 6 attack, 1 defense in Alt 2 and bot mode. So his base stat line is kind of a little rough for what you're paying for stars, but his abilities where he gets different buffs based on how many upgrades are on him is where he kind of shines. We want to focus today on Alt 1 and Alt 2. If you can get to the bot mode, great, but the bot mode is very disruptible, and that's why I don't recommend going that far. A lot of times you're probably just going to be better staying in Alt 2 or Alt 1, because that way, even if you have multiple upgrades, if they remove one, you're still getting a bonus. So his Alt 1 is when he defends with at least one upgrade, he gets an additional defense, so he goes to 3 base defense, which, if that's an armor, is likely 4 base defense or some sort of tough bonus on top of it. In Alt 2, he gets +2 attack when attacking, as long as he has 2 upgrades, making him 8 base attack, and with pretty much any weapon, 10 base attack. You do lose the defense, though, so you're probably going to want like an armor or a weapon, or like weapon or armor and utility, because you're still base 8 attack even without a weapon. So just as long as you fill out 2 of those slots, you get that. And then his bot mode, like I said, this is kind of a trap, I think, is when he has 3 upgrades in battles, he gets +3/+3, so he goes to a 9, 14, 4. But if they disrupt any of his upgrades before battling, you lose that bonus and go back to being pretty frail. So unless you're guaranteeing a kill with that extra +1 attack and know they don't have disruption, that's when I would try to... And so unless you know those things, I would try to avoid going to bot mode. The deck, though, that I'm going to talk about with Astrotrain is something I'm probably playing in the tournament. It's a very disruptive control-based Astrotrain deck. So it can get you to a point where you can try to leverage your opponent's, or leverage your resources versus your opponent's resources and limit what they can do to try to interact with you, as well as getting up to this bigger, stronger character. But you have good support to go with it, so it's not just like he's the star of the show. In fact, I would argue that even your support character Slipstream is the star over Astrotrain. Astrotrain is just there to do his job, and he's likely gonna die for it, but he's gonna do his work and let the rest of the guys close out in the meantime. So, speaking of the deck, we have Astrotrain Control. So, Astrotrain Control, this lineup's gonna look really familiar for anyone who's played Titan 1 with the other Astrotrain, the new Titan Master one. Except this time we're just replacing the Titan Master with the common one. So you have Flame War and her stratagem, Rough and Tumble, Slipstream and her stratagem, Behind Enemy Lines, and Captain Astrotrain. So what Flame War and Slipstream do as partners is Flame War being able to start in bot mode means that you get to have this really defensive based deck with innate tough 1 on everybody. And if you flip double blue, which were a very blue heavy list, you get an additional attack, so that lets your damage output kind of scale where you normally wouldn't get it. It also gives you a second specialist with Flame War, so cards like Outflank, which we have in the list, cycle themselves when you play them. But Behind Enemy Lines is kind of the real kicker for this deck. So Slipstream is already a solid 6-star at 3, 11, 2, and 4, 11, 1, focus 1. but behind enemy lines puts her to 3-11-3 focus 1 and 4-11-2 focus 1. And also her flip ability, because our other characters surprisingly aren't very flip intensive, including our centerpiece. Unless you're trying to like juggle upgrade bonuses, you're mostly going to be flipping Slipstream, and whenever an opponent reveals a card from their top of their deck or their hand, you get to zap an enemy for the first, if they do it for the first time each turn. Which a new card that was added to Junkion is Follow Through, which is going to be pretty heavily played, where your opponent reveals the top 3 cards. That gets you a zap. We're playing Interrogation, which causes your opponent to reveal their hand, so that's a zap. Her flip ability gets you a zap. And just this incremental damage gives us ways to get reach that we normally wouldn't have. So it's definitely a huge like boon to the deck to be able to do that. In the sideboard, we have Decepticon Shroot. Shroot's mostly just there. You would sub out your Slipstream or your Flame War and her. You'd either sub out both strats and Flame War for Shroot, or you'd sub out Slipstream and her strat specifically only for Shroot. But Shroot's there just for the Pierce matchup, because he caps Pierce at 4, which means that with Astrotrain's low health total, the high defense numbers won't necessarily matter. So the Pierce cap means that they're at least not just outright killing you in like 2 hits. It actually takes some work. And he turns into a Battle Master when he dies, so it's a free weapon on Astrotrain. So that's just like basically why that sideboard character was chosen. When we get to the actual battle cards in the deck, we have just a pretty, honestly I would say a pretty straightforward upgrade action suite. You're leaning upgrade heavy because of Astrotrain's abilities, but you have 3 Leap into Battle, just Combat Pump, 3 Swindled. It is off color, but it lets us power out our Astrotrain attacks and filter cards, especially since we're all Decepticons. 2 Vaporize, just catch-all removal. 2 Scouting Mission. Scouting Mission is card draw, but also can function as a zap in desperate times. Also, being a blue-black means that our smaller characters can push out a little bit of damage. We're not necessarily Pierce, but some of our like upgrades, like our Thrumming Blades and Crushing Size and Personal Targeting Drone, give us Pierce, so having a few black pips kind of can at least guarantee we deal some damage. Interrogation is the only other black pips in the main deck. We have 1 in the side as well. It's a pseudo Camion Crush in that you deal 1 to your character to get an effect, but you get to reveal your opponent's hand and scrap a card that has 1 or fewer battle icons. Doesn't matter if it's an action or an upgrade, you just get to take that out of your opponent's hand, which is pretty nice considering Slipstream's effect hits multi-color or multi-pipped battle cards. So you have these 2 between your character and your actions. You get this discard package that can hit both single and 0 pip cards and multicolored pip cards. So get some value there. Outflanks just basically Leap into Battles 4 and 5. We do have 2 specialists, so it doesn't actually cost us a card if we play it on Flame War or Astrotrain. And in a pinch, it's also just more direct damage to kill off lower health characters, which paired with Slipstream's damage can add up. 2 Hidden Fortification, 3 Hold the Line are our secret actions. So Hidden Fort is just there to tank non-pierce attacks like heavy ones. Hold the Line is the best card in Junkion. I will stand by that. It basically gives you a green-pipped force field that in certain matchups just guarantees you a win, because you know you can kill your opponent on the backswing and they might have their guy kitted out. But if you can set that Hold the Line and get that damage ceiling added, they just can't beat you. Moving on to the upgrades, we have 3 Handheld Blaster, just pretty straightforward, double pip blue. You're not really going to utilize the bold, but it is an upgrade when you need to play it onto Astrotrain, but mostly it's there for the pips. Enforcement Batons is just removal on a green pip upgrade, not bad. I think every list should be playing at least 1. Laser Launcher is a weird one at only 1. It's just there as a +3 weapon. It's a blank, so it's really bad to flip, but like you're only playing the 1, so it shouldn't hurt you too much. And like I said, it's just a +3. Kind of a solid upgrade there. Sharpened Talons, Green Pip Primary Laser, can't really complain. Or there's not too much to say about that as well. 3 Thrumming Blade. Thrumming Blade is basically going to be the replacement for most primary laser decks, just to replace their primary laser. Primary laser never felt great to have to play anyway. It's just a vanilla +2 weapon on a blue pip. So getting this like strictly better primary laser with Thrumming Blade now is pretty nice. Since it has innate Pierce 1, you're always going to at least deal some damage with it. This deck can't utilize the Energized ability. In fact, in Junkion, the only way to do that is if your opponent's playing Fevered Edges and you have Skids. We have 1 Reinforced Plating, 1 Scrapper Gauntlets, for, and a Bashing Shield is like our one-off armors. 2 of them are for removal. Bashing Shield's just great. Reinforced Plating gives us additional tough to kind of like build up our defenses. 3 Guardian Shell. Guardian Shell is up there as one of the best upgrades in the format. It's a +1 blue armor that cycles itself on coming into play and then gives you additional value when it's removed. And Reinforced Hull is a new card from ATP 6. It says that you get bonus defense against characters in Combiner mode, Legend mode, and Body mode. So getting that extra defense matters against a deck like Dreadwing, where you now have a +2 armor. It is on a blue pip as well, so it's on color. And since Astrotrain is a spaceship, when he's in that mode, it's a green pip as well. We don't have any boats, so it only affects Astrotrain's Alt 1, but it is a way to pick it up, which is kind of nice. Moving on to utilities, you have Crushing Size, Field Communicator, Targeting Drone, and Reflector Cell. So, Field Communicator, we just have 2 specialists, and you can try to high roll some upgrades sometimes. Crushing Size hits Reflector Cells and other good utilities, also just being Pierce 1 and sometimes drawing a card. Targeting Drone is basically a slow Crushing Size. It's on a green pip, so it doesn't draw us a card if they don't have a utility, but it still gives us Pierce 1, and it does remove a utility when it's removed. It's mostly there just as our green pipped utility. And Reflector Cell goes in both the armor and utility slot. It's removal, it's a heal, it's +1 defense, it's on color. Just a really good card that is really flexible. Another card I think most decks should just be playing, unless you're like hard aggro. So that's our main deck, just this pretty straightforward, good cards deck. You might notice there's a lack of Camion Crash. Our health pool isn't the biggest. We only have 36 health. So we don't want to be playing, we already are playing 6 cards that damage ourselves. We don't want to be playing too many more of those. And between Slipstream and Outflank and Scouting Mission, we do have some decent direct damage already. So I didn't include Camion Crash. I think it could be a preference thing, and you could include it over the discard if you really wanted to. I just like having the options to know what I'm against almost at all times. To the sideboard, though, we have 2 Force Field, spare parts, 3 Stable Cover, the 3rd Interrogation, and 3 Neveridols. So the Force Field is pretty straightforward against heavy aggro. Just lets us cap our damage that we take. Spare parts is another big, like, utility on a green. I think you bring it in when you bring in Shroot is kind of the idea I have for it, because it protects your weapon from removal. And also just being another green utility, it protects your defensive upgrades as well. 3 Stable Cover, pretty straightforward against the pure strategies. It also gives +1 defense, but you're mostly bringing it in to just try to have 6 copies of Hold the Line against the pure stacks. 3rd Interrogation is against heavy removal and Dreadwing, things like that, where you want to keep them off of specific cards. And Neveridol is really weird in this list because we don't have any wreckers. It's there just strictly as more discard. So because we have 2 specialists, you don't have to have a wrecker to play Neveridol. The wreckers are just to bounce the secret actions, which, I'll be honest, this deck doesn't necessarily care too much about opposing secret actions. So we're just playing that as 3 more discard cards, and they're also additional oranges when we do need to play against matchups where we need to push more damage. So yeah, that's the gist of kind of what this Astrotrain deck's trying to do. It's trying to hit hard, hit reasonably quickly, defend well, It is weak to burn and pierce, I'll say that, but that's what we have our sideboard for. Solid disruption package. So yeah, this is what I'm probably playing. I really like what this list is trying to do. The flips are fairly consistent. And Astrotrain is just a cool character. This is just it's a cool deck that I think the character, again, like I said in the beginning, was kind of laughed at as mediocre in the format. But some of these new cards and new stratagems kind of pushed him to that playable category, and I'm excited to see how he does.